An astute public officer, a retired banker, our guest today helped steer the Center of Excellence into financial independence, a task he plans to replicate on a national scale. He is resilient, passionate, and determined to improve tax compliance in Nigeria, and you'll meet him after this break. This is the Sunday Interview. I'm Jekeli Jadu. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guest today is a public officer, ex-banker, tax administrator extraordinaire, former chairman, Lagos State Board of Internal Revenue, former chief executive officer, Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, now executive chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, and chairman, African Tax Administrators Forum. Dr. Babatunde Fowler, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to start like this. What was growing up like for you in Lagos? I'm sure you grew up in Lagos.
Lagos was a very enjoyable city to grow up in. It was quite peaceful, unlike, was not as congested. You could walk on the sidewalks. Services were adequate, meaning that if there was going to be a shortage of water, they'll announce on radio, or if there's going to be a power outage, they'll announce on radio and let you be prepared. The crime rate was extremely low. Lagos had a lot of very fond memories. And of course, my secondary school, Igbobi College, was a very, very fruitful and interesting experience for me.
So who were your earliest influences, people that you would say influenced you as a child and have formed the man you are now?
Well, as a child, childhood, maybe you'll say under 13, pre-teens. Certainly my father did. When I grew a bit older and studied a bit of history, J.F. Kennedy influenced me quite a bit. And other people who saw themselves as being a point to serve others influenced me quite a bit. So I've always been interested in business, interested in government.
So what part of your childhood would you say, created this part of you, the part that just wants to collect tax from every Nigerian? Is there a part of you that you would say, kind of formed your financial inclination?
Well, I mean, like you said, I was a banker before now, and at one particular point in time, I was in charge of operations and in charge of what we call public sector collections. During that time, we used to collect revenue for the state, federal governments. We used to collect money for NITEL. And I found out that we were quite good at it. And I thought that if we explored it better or deeper, it would help government in making sure it had sufficient revenue. And that's when, around the same point in time, I got an offer to come and serve my state. That's Lagos State's government in Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. And so with the knowledge I had from banking and with the main objective of increasing the IJR for Lagos State, I thought that it fits in line with my vision and purpose and also with my exposure.
So away from what you do, how do you relax?
Well, as a tax administrator, you find out that there's very limited time to relax. You're always watching the numbers. I tell people that you get your report card every month. If you don't do well, That means the federal government doesn't have sufficient money. It means the state governments don't have sufficient money. It means the local governments don't have sufficient money. So we watch our figures on a daily basis, and so there's very little time to relax. But when I can relax, I like fishing. I like going boating. I mean, as an island boy, Lagos boy, one of the things that we do for a living is fish. And one of the things that we also do for recreation is to also go on the water.
Do you enjoy any form of sports apart from?
Well, right now I think I'm a bit too old for sports.
Even watching?
Well, I watch football from time to time. But in terms of sports that I always liked to play, I used to like to play cricket and a little bit of football. I wasn't particularly good, but I used to give a good attempt.
Do you like music?
Of course, I love music. I love all types of music.
All types of music.
Yes.
So what inspires you?
What inspires me? Well, I say challenges, new challenges. And anytime you are able to solve a problem or provide a solution or that would help others, that's what inspires me.
At the time when you took over the, of course you were the first CEO of the Lagos Internal Revenue Service. At the time, it wasn't like Lagos had so much going for it in terms of tax. I think we had about 2-3 billion every month.
The average
at the
was
time,
about
3.6 billion at the time, and you cannot turn around things. It went from 3 billion to about over 20 billion as at when you left. How were you able to achieve that feat?
Well, let me first of all give the credits to God, first of all. And then second, I had a person who engaged me. That was His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the then governor of Lagos State. And he gave me 101% support. I told him of how I intend to go about it. And he supported me, like I said, 110%. And it's difficult collecting taxes from individuals who are not used to paying taxes. From the corporate organizations, it's a bit more easy because basically it's a corporate organization that's owned by various shareholders. But when you're asking individuals to put their hand in their pockets and give you money to pay tax, it's a bit difficult. But one thing I can tell you is that anytime a report was made that this young man is disturbing us to pay tax, he never for once called me and said, back off. Back off. And anytime you presented a logical approach or a new innovation to him, he was would readily accept it. And of course, in his handover to Governor Fowler, he carried on with the same approach. So we had a relatively good working relationship. Nobody was untouchable.
So what's the most interesting part of your job as a tax administrator?
I think the most interesting part is when you see the funds collected, what they're used for, and you can see the smiles on the faces of people. When you see the improvements in the environment, you see businesses coming to invest in those areas, be it Lagos or new businesses coming into Nigeria because they believe that Nigeria is out of recession, is bouncing back because government has a capacity to carry out certain programs, and that's the joy. And
what's the most challenging part?
I think in my present job, and I think in any other job, the most challenging part is change. You do meet people who are there, and sometimes they resist change, or they think you've come with an attitude that you know it all. And I tell people that I don't know it all. It's impossible for me to know it all. But we have to work together to share that same vision. And I think that's a challenge. And in the process of that, sometimes people don't understand new innovations. You find a lot of people sometimes writing, in quote, petitions about things that are not true. You find a lot of people who are not used to working, I'll say 9 to 9. Some of them will say the official work time is 8 to 5, and 5 o'clock is time to go home. But when you're bringing about changes, and especially in a revenue agency, basically you have no closing time.
So how crucial would you say payment of tax is to national development? Because apparently a lot of Nigerians seem to not understand the connection. They want, the best things out of life. They want good roads, they want the right infrastructure, but they don't want to pay their tax. How crucial is this?
After God and after receiving a vision by a good leader, then tax is everything. There's no developed country in this world that doesn't rely on tax. Basically, the good roads, the good education, good facilities, all come from tax, regardless of whether you're in America or whether you're in Africa or whether you're in Europe. And basically, it's just the few lucky people and few organizations that are fortunate to make a profit or earn an income, giving back to society from where they make that money to help that society move forward. So basically, without revenue from tax, you can have a great vision, but it will remain a dream.
You were once a banker. Do you miss banking at all?
Since I've got into public service, not really. Banking has also changed over the period of time that I was there. My last appointment, I was a general manager in charge of business development for Southern Nigeria, and we did banking a bit different. Now, banking is still challenging, but maybe because the productive economy in Nigeria is not as active, you'll find a lot of bankers are just doing what we call money market transactions. They're investing in treasury bills, trying to mop up revenue, but they're not really lending to the real sector. So without doing that, banking has lost that. Yeah.
So if you had not ended up in the financial sector, say banker, tax administrator, what other careers do you think you would have pursued?
Maybe I would have owned a fleet of vehicles and become a chauffeur or a driver.
Yeah. That looks fairly unlikely.
Why not? Or a fisherman.
Okay.
You see, people tend to look at certain professions as not being as fancy, but all professions are worthwhile. And I think transportation, when I say being a chauffeur, you could have a fleet of vehicles, you could have executive chauffeurs, you could do fishing, which I enjoy personally. And I think as a food type, fish is very good for the body. And we are literally blessed with the amount and type of fish we have off the coast of Lagos. I honestly think that if we could find a way to preserve the fish that we catch within Lagos, nobody would be hungry.
Sure. So what gives you the greatest satisfaction in life?
The greatest satisfaction in life? I think I sort of touched on that earlier. To be able to touch other people's lives, to make sure that things work. And in my role in government, I'm always happy to find out that we've played a little part in providing that revenue of funds that government requires to make life better for you and I.
All right, we'll go on a short break now. When we come back, we'll still be speaking with the Executive Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Dr. Babatunde Fowler. Stay with us. Welcome back. We've spent the last couple of minutes getting into the world of a tax administrator, former banker, and member of the International Experts Committee on Tax Matters, Dr. Babatunde Fowler. Thanks for staying with us.
Thank you.
So, sometimes during the year, you were elected as the first vice chairman, of the United Nations Committee of Experts on International Cooperation in Tax Matters.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, how that translates into a better tax regime for us here in Nigeria.
Well, basically, at the United Nations, we try to build models that would improve the level of funding through taxation, especially in developing countries. So I think Nigeria still falls under that category of a developing nation. But in terms of Nigeria, in terms of its place in Africa, it's one of the major players in line with South Africa and maybe Ghana and a few others when it comes to the economic well-being of Africa. So basically, I think in adding my little expertise in discussions at United Nations, they would come up with tax policies that would also be favorable to developing countries. They'll come up with tax policies that would also educate and also try to train tax administrators across the world.
Now, I know that tax education is a big issue here in Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians can't even travel abroad because it's difficult for them to get used to, the kind of taxation that they get over there. It's like when you sneeze, you pay your tax over there. Now, how is, the FIRS trying to change this, and ensure that a lot more Nigerians know about, what it takes to pay their tax and what they get to enjoy if they do that?
Well, when I assumed office here, we introduced a new directorate called FEET, and that's Federal Enlightenment and Engagement Tax Teams, and they go around the whole nation and they give out free information. They help individuals and corporate organizations register for tax. They also tell them and teach them about tax administration. And at the same time, we are in the media. We attend all types of events if we're invited. We attend concerts, we attend lectures, and anytime we can distribute and educate the tax-paying public about tax administration, both at the federal and state level. We do that, of course, free of charge. We've also introduced a comic book for the youth on taxation, which we give out free to school children and to schools, so that in reading that comic book, the word tax certainly is used. And so when they become adults, it won't be a new word to them. So on a daily basis, we're interacting with potential taxpayers and taxpayers that currently pay, and trying to make sure that they're fully compliant.
Now, how do you, enforce compliance? Because I know that in other countries, we've seen celebrities go to jail for just defaulting in the payment of tax. How do you, ensure that everybody who should pay tax pay, not just pay as a when due, and pay what's right, they should rightly pay?
Well, there are various methods that we use at the FIRS. First of all, we engage various stakeholders and try and tell them of the need to pay taxes as when due. We've also given them a few sweeteners. When I say sweeteners, we've given them the opportunity to pay back taxes without paying interest and penalty. We've recently launched what we call the VADES program, which gives individuals and corporate organizations another opportunity up until the 31st of March 2018 to come forward with a self-assessment and pay those taxes. Now, when all this fails, then we will prosecute. For existing taxpayers who are still owing taxes that have not taken up the opportunity of VADES, we do enforce, meaning that we have the legal ability to close that business down and stop them from operating, which we do from time to time.
But I doubt that we've seen so much persecution when it comes to, defaulting in the payment of tax. Well, how often do we get to see this?
Well, because of the existing VADES program, which expires on the 31st of March, you will not really see any or much individual prosecution. We'll only prosecute individuals now if they file false returns or they find a way to, let me use this word very carefully, steal government money. Okay. Now, you might say, how do they steal government money? We have what we call VAT, value added tax, and they collect that on behalf of government, and they're supposed to remit it on a monthly basis. Some organizations have collected that money and have not remitted it. Now, the VAT funds is not theirs. They're just holding it in custody, in trust, for a 30-day period and supposed to hand it over. So people who don't hand over the VAT are actually stealing government money. So if they don't, and we do find them, we will prosecute them for theft.
The organizations that, deduct tax from their employees' salaries and fail to remit to, FIRS, Lagos, the state's internal revenue services. Now, what is the penalty for doing this?
Well, basically, if that money is spent, it's what we call the diversion of money, which is indirectly a theft of money. And because it was not enforced for a while, some people got used to the idea. But now we have deployed technology that would let you know whether money deducted from you, like withholding tax, has been paid. At the FRS now, all you need to give us is your email address. Once you have a tax ID, anytime money is credited under your TIN, you get an email and you can download your receipts immediately. So that will tell you whether taxes have been paid on your behalf or not.
Now, a lot of Nigerians will say that it's not paying the tax that is their problem. It's how would government use my money, particularly since we've had years of corrupt practices in this country. Now, what is FIRS doing to bridge the gap as to holding government accountable for, yes, you are the one collecting this money from the people, but there has to be a way that you have to hold government accountable for the people, because it's their money at the end of the day, in making sure that they get the right infrastructure.
Well, let me put it this way. We as a revenue agency can't hold government accountable because we work for government and we work for the people. I think in the Joint Tax Board, we do go from state to state. We showcase, or the state showcases what they've used taxpayers' money to do, and we put that in the media. But at the same time, I think that individuals and corporate organizations should first of all obey the law, pay their taxes, and if they're not satisfied with the government, either at the federal level or the state level, they have the power of vote. So when it comes time to voting, they should do the right thing.
Now, there are states in this country that do not have the kind of IGL that Lagos has, and most people say it's because of the fact that they have not, utilized the tax mechanism that is being used in Lagos. What's the FIRS doing to ensure that, in those kind of states that are over-reliant on the federal government, they catch on the awareness to get more people into the tax net?
Well, like I said before, we have the Joint Tax Board, to which we're all members. We exchange ideas when we meet. We also have agreed to work together to show them the potential, that there's potential in every state. And once you get your taxpayers registered and you get them to pay even the minimum amounts that they feel like they want to pay, it adds up. Yeah.
What's your long-term plan, for Nigeria as regards tax administration, as regards getting people on board? Because as it is now, I'm sure the people who pay tax in Nigeria are probably not up to 50%.
Definitely not, yeah.
What's the long-term plan for getting more people?
Well, as long as I'm in office, I hope to grow the level of tax compliance to a new high. I hope to grow the number of taxpayers also to a new high. And if I can achieve 90% of that, then I'll believe that I've done well by the grace of God. And also, I want to be able to leave this job knowing that taxpayers can fund our budgets without oil.
So do you see yourself replicating the miracle you performed in Lagos on the federal level?
Well, we're working towards it. At the federal level, it's taking a bit more time because we do have some limitations. We have what we call the procurement process. We have to change the mode of operation of staff and their vision. But we're getting there. We're making waves. At least we've been able to improve over last year, we've been able to improve the amount collected in VAT by over 20%. We've had significant percent increases across all tax types. So we've already exceeded total revenue collection this year over 2016. So we're heading in the right direction.
Let me ask you what your word is to Nigerians as regards payment of their tax.
Well, apart from it being a legal obligation, I know that Nigerians love Nigeria. So for people who love Nigeria, I think we should join hands together. And I just had to latch onto this phrase. Trump says, "Make Nigeria great," and I say,
Make
"I mean, make
America
America great," and I say, "Make Nigeria great." You know.
And I want to ask you, lastly, now, one thing that you know about yourself that a lot of people do not know, but you like to share with them.
That I know about myself that a lot of people don't know. I'd like to share with them. Wow, that's a tough one. I would have asked you that.
Everybody said that's a tough question.
Is that a trick question?
No?
That I know about myself that other people don't know. Okay, I'm a very shy person. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure most people know that.
Now, to be a tax collector, it's difficult to be shy. Yeah.
So how have you managed?
Sometimes you just have to act unshy.
All right. That's it. From the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Dr. Babatunde Fowler. Of course, he's a shy person, like I said. We've been getting into his world, in the world of tax payment. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you very much, viewers, for watching the show. Remember, you can keep up with us by sending your emails to the Sunday interview at tvcnews.tv. We'll be waiting to hear from you. Thanks again for watching. I'm Jokeli Jado. Bye for now.